Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I welcome you to the sixth program in our series celebrating the work of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations for its 25th anniversary. It's been in existence from 1981 to 2005. Today we will deal with the year 1997 and the first half of 1998. We opened up 1997 with our 12th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Children's Program at North Idaho College, where the program is always held with 1,200 children from the school districts of our area. It's one of our very most important programs. And then a little bit later, in January 1997, our task force presented media awards to two major newspapers in our area, the Spokesman Review and the Coeur d'Alene Press. We particularly were stressing a series called The War Within, written by Bill Moreland at the Spokesman Review, and the 16-year support of the Coeur d'Alene Press in our work. And then something else happened that was of major importance to our work. It took place in 1996 and into 1997. There was bombings in Spokane by hate groups. A clinic was bombed, and also the building of the Spokesman Review. And Norm Gessler, who's with us, a board member of our task force and an attorney, will describe how that happened.
What happened was that there was a group, a chapter of the Phineas Priesthood, which is a national group of racists dedicated to raising as much social havoc as they can. This group landed in Sandpoint and organized there, and somehow they let a client of mine know what their activities were, and they advised him on one occasion to watch the television Saturday morning because he would see some big news, and he did turn on the television set at that time. And not only did he witness videotape of a robbery, an armored robbery of a bank in Spokane, but he was a salesperson of used military equipment, and he recognized some
time. We have to move on, and your client came to you. Is that correct?
That's correct. He recognized his own equipment, rushed to see me. Then he became an FBI informant.
So you took your client to the FBI, and you really broke the story through your client.
He was the cooperating witness number one and broke the case.
Thank you. With that, we move on to April 1997, and we had a very important opening with the business community, public officials, business leaders, and religious community, a gathering of the task force and also the Northwest Coalition. And Doug Cresswell, you were president at the time, and you're now still on the board, and you emceed that program.
I did. It was a very successful leadership gathering. It was sponsored, as you indicated, by the task force as well as the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment. The theme for that gathering of leaders in Coeur d'Alene was building communities where bigotry finds no home. The purpose was to try and draw attention to the work that the task force was doing and to solicit and encourage community leaders to also get involved in this activity to counter the Aryan nations and the image of Coeur d'Alene.
And that was a large turnout, and it's really backing it was the business community.
There were 350 to almost 400 representatives there. As you indicated, all of the business, religious leaders, political leaders.
And that's been the role of the task force, is organize such groups.
Right, and I think it was very instrumental in getting the community and the community leaders involved in working for human rights in our community.
Thank you. Dr. Peggy Federici is with us, and she's been dedicated to the work of the task force. And Peggy, you've done something called the Peace Camp. Well, it's a remarkable program, and it goes over not just 1997, but tell us about the camp.
Camp Peace has been around since 1990, so we're in our 15th year. And what we do is we invite teams of high school sophomores from the Spokane area and North Idaho. And these teams come out and spend a weekend with us. The first team that came was from Lakeside High School down in Worley Plummer, and they named it Camp Peace, which stands for people everywhere are created equal.
What a remarkable genius for them to do that.
It really was.
And you've been the coordinator every year.
I've been the facilitator for the camp every year.
And teaching at it.
Teaching it, yes. Everything relies on the interactive things that we do there.
We have limited time, but also I think it's important for our viewers to know that the task force has been so excited about that and other organizations in Spokane. But give us a quick example of how good the results have been.
The results that we're seeing are when I go out and I visit the schools in the Spokane area or in North Idaho, quite a few of the high schools have human relations or human rights groups that are active at their school, and they can trace them back to Camp Peace. And another really gratifying part of this has been when I attend conferences and I see Camp Peace graduates there actively carrying on the roles in the community, working for human rights. I get pretty excited.
Your work will go on forever because they'll pass it on to others.
Right.
Another thing we do from time to time is enter parades, another way to speak to the public. It's a classroom, and Lucy Lipinski, who is on the board of the task force, has been for years, was involved in something called the Crayon Kids at a parade on July the 4th in Coeur d'Alene.
That was a wonderful experience for myself and for the children. Crayons come in many colors, and so do people. So that was the idea and the focus behind it. We gave out 5,000 bags of crayons along the path to the children who were watching the parade. And I've spoke with some of the children in the last week and over time, over the years since the event, and it really shaped who they are today. I'd be interested to know how many of them ended up at Peace Camp, because they were much younger children that participated.
And there was big crayon boxes on the float and all that, which was very dramatic.
Yeah, they wore pointed crayon top hats of many colors. And
great visuals.
Yes, and diversity was displayed on the float amongst the children as well as the color of the crayons.
Norm Gessler, back to him, again, a board member of the task force. Now, one thing you believed in, Norm, is writing guest editorials, a way to talk to the public, and one of those was Decent People Must Thwart Neo-Nazis in November 1997. Tell us why you think those editorials are important.
These editorials are important for a variety of reasons, but it allows us an additional forum to speak with the people of the inland Northwest, and specifically the people in Kootenai County, about certain events that are occurring, and in this case it was a rash of outrageous neo-Nazi activity, and we took that opportunity to rally the troops, so to speak, and address the community, and we got a good reaction to it.
And oftentimes you suggest those editorials too because there'd be letters to the editor that were so biased, and they're a way of defending equality.
Right. The press, throughout this long 20-some year history, has really been a good avenue for us. They've supported us by allowing us to do these guest editorials from time to time.
Well, along with other things.
Oh yeah, many other things.
Yes. Our next guest is Josh Buhner, who was president of the NIC Human Equality Club and on this task force board, and moved to Seattle, where until recently worked for Safeco Corporation. Josh, welcome, and you were a real spark with that club, and while you were here, many activities took place. Would you share with us? One of them was in November 1997.
Yeah, first part of November, the campus had been literature had been spread on the campus that was anti-Jewish and pro-Aryan Nation propaganda. And within a couple of days after the literature had been spread, I had an incident in the parking lot behind the library where I was spat upon, and a person used a racial slur. So as president of the club, working with the student body as well as the interim president, Ron Bell, we put together a rally to kind of put the spotlight on this issue of racism and to address the problem that was happening here on campus. And it was both students and faculty and trustee members and task force all came together to try to
got a lot of
champion.
coverage with the media, too, and rallied the community. Also, November 1997 was another important event. Doug Creswell, back to you, as a board member and a former president of the task force. We often sponsor press conferences, and there have been, again, a lot of hate literature, and you preside over this press conference at North Idaho College. Tell us how it was different from others and who you call for to speak on behalf of human rights.
Well, that particular press conference was called to basically denounce hate materials that had been, and leaflets and flyers that have been distributed in parking lots and grocery stores and different places in Hayden Lake, Post Falls, Rathdrum, and Coeur d'Alene. And we felt that it was necessary to speak out, denounce those materials. We did that. We invited 15 major speakers. It included representatives from our congressmen. It included the mayors from all of those cities. It included state legislators, leaders in the community.
County commissioners.
County commissioners. And they gathered here, each took their turn and spoke very eloquently, denouncing those hate materials. They were anti-Semitic, they were anti-black, they were white supremacists. They personally attacked some of our task force members.
So one of the roles of the task force is to get elected officials together. They're elected and they can speak from a very powerful forum.
And we were pleased with the representatives.
Yeah, they were very cooperative.
Yes.
Let's move to 1998, and we'll do part of the year on the program today. Again, we always start out January, the task force, with North Idaho College and with the school districts, particularly Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls. And we had our 13th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Children's Program on January the 15th at North Idaho College, where it is always held. And then as we move on, Josh Buhner, you were continuing to work and put together forums and panels at North Idaho College with the North Idaho College Human Equality Club, which I think is about 18 years old now as a club. One of those that I'd like for you to talk about was called Love, Not Hate panel presentation.
With all the activity that had still been occurring in the community as well as on campus, we put together an event, a panel discussion. It was actually shortly after the beating death of Matthew Shepard in Wyoming to try to help facilitate the conversation about not only talking about what's happening currently in the community, but how as a community or as a society we can begin to overcome some of the challenges so that this becomes kind of old news and we're not focused on these horrible instances such as what happened to Matthew Shepard. And I remember, right, we gave out yellow ribbons in memory and honor of Matthew Shepard at that event.
Many students tell me you were a great inspiration leader, so students need to be involved, just like Peggy has done with her Peace Camp and others. It's really thousands of youth have been involved in this work or responded to what we've asked. Then in 1998 was our first year of something that I loved to talk about, and we initiated, and it's now been going on since 1998. Every year in March or April we have an annual human rights banquet. I think banquets have another dimension to human rights with a speaker and food, breaking bread together. And our first one was on April 13th, 1998, and our keynote speaker was the governor of the state of Idaho, Governor Phil Batt. And he had also, as a senator, state senator, authored years ago the Human Rights Commission, state of Idaho, and we thought it was so appropriate for him to speak. And I'm going to ask Lucy to start and then Doug Cresswell to speak to this too, both of them on the task force board. Tell us about that first banquet, Lucy, and and what all happened, including Governor Phil Batt's speech.
Of course it was special because it was first, but also it was particularly special because of the governor's sincerity in what he shared with us. He opened his speech by naming 6 gentlemen and asking them to stand. And then he told us that they could not stand because they had died in World War II, giving their life fighting the Nazis, and that they did not die in vain. And we were all very touched by that statement. He went on to say that the hate groups in Idaho are truly a minority, and they do not represent the mainstream of Idaho. Again, he was very sincere in his presentation, and I personally was very touched.
Dramatic moment.
Yes.
Would you add to that, Cresswell?
Well,
you were emceeing.
I did. I had the privilege of emceeing that first the foundation banquet, and we were pleased to have the governor of the state of Idaho, and his message was very impressive. He was very blunt about the fact that the Aryan Nation was an eyesore in our state, that we didn't appreciate, Idahoans didn't appreciate their message of hate, and so, like I say, he was very blunt in his remarks, and we're especially pleased to have the governor of our state be the first keynote speaker of our very first banquet.
It really kicked things off, and those banquets have 400 to 500 in attendance every year, and we've had very powerful speakers, and there's a lot of coverage. In fact, one lady said to me, after one of the banquets, she said, it's my favorite thing each year because it's the most diverse group in the community. People that don't do other things together are always convened for that. Normally have some time for you to talk about, and then we have one other guest, a very special guest. Norm Gessler's been our attorney through this whole process over the years, and he, and bringing in Morris Dees, had one of the, I would say, the top highlight in our struggle against the Aryan Nations. On July the 1st, 1998, security guards on the compound at the Aryan Nations attacked a mother and her son. And Norm, we want to hear, we'll talk about the trial on another show, but talk about how, after that awful incident, how you got involved as the attorney for the Keenans.
Mrs. Keenan and her son were very, very frightened after having been shot at and physically assaulted on a dark public roadway in Coeur d'Alene in Kootenai County, Idaho, as anybody would be. And she saw an article in a newspaper that talked about the task force, and she called that lady, that was a member of the task force.
Our vice president at the time, Judy Watley.
Judy Watley. She called Judy Watley, and then Judy Watley immediately then called Tony, and then Tony called me, and I asked Tony to communicate with this lady. I hadn't met her before, and asked him to get her into my office, and that we would discuss the facts of this case. And it was from that point, several weeks after the terrible events of the shooting and the mugging, that we started developing the case that came to be known nationally and internationally as Butler, or Keenan versus Butler.
And Norm, Victoria Keenan, the mother, and I believe her son was 19, Jason. Am I not correct that you, I don't want to embarrass you, but you're a remarkable person, and you've given so much time to human rights. In fact, you worked on that case for 2 years, which we'll talk about on a later show, for free.
Yeah.
But didn't you work with her for about 2 months? She was so frightened and devastated by this, and you built a rapport with her, and wasn't that about 2 months? And then you called in an organization.
Yeah, it was. I spent a good period of time initially with her, regaining her trust and confidence in me and in the establishment, we knew that a criminal prosecution should emanate out of this terrible set of facts, and I even had to escort her out to the sheriff's office and do some initial viewing of photographs and everything to start identifying these terrible people that shot and mugged the Keenan family.
In fact, the security guards, when they came off, and she was traveling down the public road by the compound, they chased her for about a mile. I believe I'm correct that they shot her car 4 or 5 times, ran her off the road, and then actually verbally and physically were abusive. Yeah. And then after you did all of this, then showing that you're always wanting other people to be involved, you're not selfish in any way, then you made a very important telephone call.
Right. Well, actually, I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to the Southern Poverty Law Center and invited the brilliant attorneys at the Southern Poverty Law Center to participate in this litigation. And Morris Dees and Richard Cohn, 2 of the brightest legal minds in the United States, read my letter, or had it read to them. They were in a car driving back from someplace, and they spent a couple of hours in this car discussing the implications of this letter. And we talked on the phone a number of times, and then they agreed to represent the Keenans as well as plaintiffs' attorneys, and so we had this wonderful natural built-in advantage of brilliant attorneys who had sued the Klan on numerous times before, and so there was nothing new when they sued the local Nazis. And
we'll talk more, and I know our viewers will want to tune back in. We'll talk about, this is 1998, and there's 2 years of work, and the trial will take place in 2000. And when we do that year on the show, you will tell us about that. But Norm, you're truly a hero for all the work, and I happen to know how much that you sacrificed financially to do that. You've given an incredible gift to all the people of this country. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn to our good friend, Dr. Michael Burke. He's the president of North Idaho College. In addition to being president of the institution, he's on the board of directors of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. And when he arrived about 8 years ago, I saw immediately that he was a man with great passion for human rights. Dr. Burke, before and after you have been here, we have said many times in our board that this task force could not have done what it's done without this partnership with North Idaho College. Would you share your thoughts about human rights and the college and that relationship with the task force?
Thank you, Tony. It's real simple to me as a college president. You look at our mission as an institution, and we speak to teaching and learning and student success, as most colleges do, but we also speak to that ultimate outcome of developing the full potential in all the human beings that we serve as an institution. And I see that same commonality with the task force, that none of us can be successful if we tolerate the kinds of abuses that Norm and the rest of you have described. We cannot tolerate the kind of debasement that you're discussing among our fellow human beings. It goes counter to our own mission as an institution. And in a broader perspective, it's fundamental. Human rights are fundamental to everything your task force has done for the 20 years before I got here, as well as what we do on a daily basis as educators, and that's develop the human beings that are in this institution. As a volunteer organization, I think the college can provide you, the task force, over the decades, have been able to provide you a venue, an opportunity to meet on Martin Luther King Day and use our wonderful facilities to bring hundreds and hundreds of school-age children into a diversity event. And that's something I'm more than happy to do. As president of the college, it's important to our overall mission. It's why we are here. It's the same thing this task force is trying to accomplish: improve the quality of life in this community for generations. It's very obvious to me, Tony, what we're trying to accomplish together.
You've been so supportive, and in those 20, when this program's in, we'll have had 20 years of the King's program, and we've had probably 24,000 kids through that, and we've used the facility here in conjunction with the North Idaho College Popcorn Forum and the club, the Human Equality Club, and your arms have always been open to that. Also, Dr. Burke, in addition to all of those functions and activities and many others, we've had press conferences here a lot of times, as we have at St. Pius Catholic Church, where we have our meetings for the board. You also have worked very hard to send a message yourself. I remember certain things, and I remember that you gave a speech along with Governor Kempthorne, and Josh Buhner spoke, and others. We had a rally here to counter the march of the Aryans, and all of you gave dramatic speeches, including the governor. But afterwards, you went to lunch with your wife and a friend, and this has really stuck with me. And you told me that afternoon you were very angry. And tell us, it just really impressed me because of why you were so upset.
It's strange how things affect you sometimes. You don't realize they're happening until they're over. But after that day, I went to lunch with my wife and some friends and realized I was probably not somebody you would want to go to lunch with on that particular day. And it really dawned on me at that sometime after lunch that I think I said to you that we should not have to have these kinds of events. We shouldn't have to be fighting these kinds of fights in the late 20th century. It just hit me very hard at that point, what we were doing and how involved we were in combating something, as you said, people died for in World War II, and the issues that were right on our doorstep. And it was, I guess I was frustrated and taken aback that we're still in the middle of this fight.
You were connecting your heart with your intellect. And I was so impressed. I'll never forget that conversation. I remember those. We have a little time left. I'm going to go back to Dr. Peggy Federici. What I did not say about her, she's on our faculty, and she also is an expert on diversity courses and multicultural and some differences. She teaches those courses here, along with her support of the task force and her peace camp. I'd like to give you a little opportunity to talk about why and this ties into what Dr. Burke said, why that is so important in the curricula, and why, if we're going to really have great victories over hate, why education is so important.
I guess for me, when I think of what we do here at North Idaho College, and that we have a mission statement where we will be helping all types of students to be successful, I think it's very important at this campus that we have a variety of classes that address the needs of those students, not only in issues of race, but also gender, ableism, also for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender kids that don't feel comfortable in this community. And so I would hope that we would continue to expand our wealth of diversity offerings here if we're going to help everyone be successful and reach their full potential.
In addition to your courses, and I'm very familiar with them in our division on diversity and multicultural programs now, we also have a very special program here that I'll refer back to Dr. Burke on, and that is we have American Indian Studies program. I particularly have a great relationship in working with the Coeur d'Alene tribe. Isn't that another way that we reach out?
That's been a real highlight. When I came here, I was impressed with the outreach the college had done to the tribe, and it was, I think, relatively new at that time. And that has been ongoing. We've kept that relationship and that door open. If you were at our ribbon cutting for our new building on campus last week, we had the tribal council representative there, and he spoke very passionately about that connectiveness and the fact that over a long haul we've had the door open, and we've been able to recruit their students and assist tribal members in graduating and transferring on and coming back to the reservation with skills that the tribe needs. It's very heartwarming.
I want to connect that to the schools because we have to honor Doug Cresswell. He was superintendent of the schools for a long time here and was on the task force at the same time. And Doug, let's tie that to schools, and I give you full credit for finding Pam Pratt, the principal who has been in charge of the King program. Tell us why that was important to your school district and other districts.
Well, first of all, we determined early on, I think, as board members of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, that educational programs were important. And we have some very talented school administrators, including Pam Pratt in our school district. But Pam Pratt stepped forward. She volunteered to MC and plan and organize the annual Martin Luther King activities.
Well, we thank you, and she's a joy to work with. We're out of time, but I just have to give you that credit, how you and the school districts and the college and all have worked together to be a big part of what the task force does. And you and Dr. Burke both have been in the role at the task force as well as with your institutions. I think all of you, it's been really enjoyable and inspiring to me to go back and visit history and why we've done what we've done. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue this series, and program number 7 is next week, and we'll continue through 1998 into 1999. Again, we want to celebrate 25 years of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. Until next week, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.